On this edition of the Saint Seiya Cosmocast, we are back from break and giving you a summary of things to look out for Saint Seiya in 2023, and go through episodes 53 to 56 of the classic anime. All this and more on this edition of the Saint Seiya Cosmocast, episode 25 for Sunday, January 29th, 2023. And welcome everybody to the Saint Seiya Cosmocast, the very first podcast dedicated to Saint Seiya in English. I am Ramses, the host of this particular podcast. I am joined here by Benjas.
Hello, everybody.
I'm also joined here by Kamen Rider Furry.
Hello, it's me.
It is you. And I figured we got a whole revamp of so much going on with the show. Like we got some new assets. Thank you so much thank you so much to Zaichi for making us all this new art for the show and everything. This I really am appreciative of what he did. He knocked it out of the park. It's a retro style, so like if this is your first time listening from like any other podcast that we do, welcome. And second of all, this is a brand new look that we commissioned, and it looks fantastic. And I do hope that everybody is kind of in agreement. And I figured, look, I want to continue this retro style. I'm gonna continue doing. I'm gonna continue with it. So we got rid of the old theme. We put in a new theme, and we're just gonna run with this. We're gonna run with this for like the next year or so, if not more, if people like it. But I figured we just we give ourselves a little bit more of a give ourselves a little bit more of a spit shine. So it's been a while. It's been a while. I think the last time we talked was beginning of January for our little for a little town hall that we did. But our last recorded episode was way back in October for reasons that thankfully things didn't end up being as bad as they were. But at the time when it did happen, it was kind of like major. At the time, like it was something that was an incident that it kind of scared everybody, and we had to make sure that everything was good. But now that things are kind of in the clear, where we can we can proceed as caution. So now we just kind of well, instead of taking at least 4 to 5 weeks, now we're taking 8 weeks. So my bad. But we got our energy recharged, and there's a lot that's been going on. And I figured too, since there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on with Saint Seiya going on in particular. In addition to what we usually do is usually we would have a topic, news, and then we would have we have an episode discussion of the episodes, of a group of episodes, either from the CGI show, or in this case we're talking of the original show. And I figured with all this new stuff that we put in for the show, this new intro, these new assets and all that stuff, I figured we take a little moment and reintroduce people to who we are and give a little bit of a basic backstory as to what we did, what we've been up to, and who we are and stuff like that. And then afterwards we discuss what's been going on with Saint Seiya, what's available right now, what you can get, what's not available, what is available. So kind of a refresher to what things that are going on in the world of Saint Seiya currently. And then we go on to our episode discussions, which are from 53 to 56 of the original series. So I am going to start off with Kamen Rider Furry, since you're the one who lives here in the United States and in English. So your experience is it's gonna be a very very interesting one to hear from everybody. So Furry, would you like to go first?
Yeah, well, I don't even know where to start because it's a little bit fuzzy. I've talked about it a couple of times, just in anecdotal type of stories, but I got into anime at a really young age, probably around 6 or 7 years old, because of what was airing on television: Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon. I'm sure there were other ones, but those were the two that I just absolutely obsessed over all the time. And then, of course, the VHS rental store. Yes, because I'm that old. But the the rental stores would have things like Fushigi Yugi and Blue Seed and things you could only find on tape that wasn't airing on television. And as you know, most likely from listening to this podcast, at that time we didn't have Saint Seiya. But because of how similar it was to Sailor Moon and Ronin Warriors, and they're kind of in the same vein of the teams of colorful people that have transformation sequences, although the Saint Seiya ones are a little less intense than Sailor Moon and Ronin Warriors. They eventually, I just started stumbling onto images of these, and they looked really cool. They've got the armor, they've got colorful hair. It was right up my alley of something that I wanted to watch. Unfortunately, at the time, I was very much a dub only kind of person. I I was young. I don't know. I guess that's my excuse. But I kept looking for a dub. Like I was like, surely, I mean, this looks older. In my head, I'm trying to rationalize. I was like, this looks older. It's very popular apparently because I see all these websites for it. It's got to have an English dub. So I kind of pushed off watching it for a long time until I was probably in my teens, and then I just caved in and I ordered some bootleg DVDs. I do not condone bootlegs, by the way. But no, I ordered bootlegs and watched the entire Sanctuary arc on these horrible Chinese subtitles. I don't know if you guys, do you guys know about the Hong Kong subtitles and how terrible they are?
Yes.
Yeah,
This is the first time I've heard about them actually.
so back in the early 2000s, it was really like on eBay, it was really prevalent to find Hong Kong. They're called HK subs, Hong Kong subs, and it's because Hong Kong is, or China in general, like, not to get too political, but their copyright laws are extremely lax, so bootlegs are extremely prevalent in the Chinese market, and Hong Kong has a ton of English speakers. So what they would do is they would take these Chinese bootlegs and translate the Chinese translation. So we're getting a double translation first of all. So they would translate it from Japanese to Chinese. I don't know how accurate those translations are, but the translations from Chinese to English was very inaccurate. Has lots of spelling mistakes, lots of grammatical errors, and the worst part is that for some reason they changed the names of the characters to Chinese names. I guess
Mm.
and this is not just a Saint Seiya thing. This is every HK subtitled show that I've watched. Like I've seen several Kamen Rider ones. I saw some older anime ones and things like that. Because for a while, that's all we really had for these shows. Because there were fan subgroups at the time, but because there was so few of them, a lot of these like smaller shows or older shows were getting left behind so that they could translate the new stuff and get the new stuff out. Because that was what was popular. Um, so I had these awful translated Hong Kong subs, and that from then on I was just kind of hooked, and I was finding better and better outlets because eventually the ADV dub came out, so I collected all of those DVDs and what little merchandise I could get my hands on. But I've just been kind of hooked ever since then. Like it was really the struggle bus, and I feel like a lot of solo English speakers that live in the United States have probably been on that bus if they're into the Saint Seiya fandom, or at least were back in the day before we started getting, official things out for it. But yeah, it was an interesting time to be a fan of Saint Seiya for sure.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that by no influence of like television or no influence of like what's been going on, like with no influence whatsoever from like television and whatnot to to seek out this series, you went out on your own and you went out and you proactively went out of your way to get the series on your own. So that's something that's very fascinating that like I said, you just saw some websites. It looks similar to other stuff that you've been watching before,
Mhm.
and you just went with it, which is completely the inverse. As if you listen to our other podcast, Sailor Moon Says, was kind of the inverse of what happened with me, where it's like it looked this is Sailor Moon, like it looked exactly like Saint Seiya, so I got into Sailor Moon because of that. So that's the thing I find really interesting, that it's like almost the inverse of like how I got started with Sailor Moon. You got started like that with Saint Seiya, and so you weren't aware, like you weren't aware of like that of the deep dub at the time, I presume, right? When you got these DVDs.
This was before the deep dub came out. Like
Oh, okay.
yeah, like real early 2000s, because the deep dub came out like 2004, I think,
2003.
2005. So yeah, somewhere around there. This was like probably 2000, 2001. My dad was
Wow.
really big into technology, so he was like an early adapter for everything. We had a DVD player in like 1999. He had a what are those things called? Because we talked about them just real recently. The really big discs,
Oh, Laserdisc.
Laserdisc. We had a Laserdisc player. We had obviously Betamax from before I could really form memories, probably before I was even born. But yeah, anytime he had HD DVD when that came out, like he was an early adapter for that. So it's just as all these things were coming out, he was getting them. So we had a DVD player from a long time. So I was just online looking for anything I could get my hands on, and I knew going into buying them that they were going to be bootlegs because I had bought other other things that look suspiciously like this before. And being a part of the anime community, you learn what's like too good to be true and what's actually legitimate, especially for the time. Like if you came across something that said like all 200 episodes of Sailor Moon subtitled for $40, it's like this is a bootleg. I don't even need to see the cover to know that this is a bootleg. But yeah, it was really just me seeing images like on fan sites and stuff like that. People, it was really popular back then to ship like like anime characters from different anime together. So like you would have, and I'm not going there. I know that people expect me to go there, but I'm not going there. But people would ship Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon characters together. End of sentence. They would also pair Saint Seiya characters and Sailor Moon characters together. I can't remember if that's how I found it. It's hard to remember so long ago exactly like what the first time was when I saw the characters and the artwork and stuff. But it was definitely early internet age. Definitely still in the slow dial-up internet era of on this, because we did live in the middle of nowhere. So it took us a long time to get high-speed internet. Probably, embarrassingly enough, probably to like not 2007 or 8 did we have high-speed internet.
That's around the same time I got it too, so don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, my little small town did not like change. Yeah, it was.
And we were and like and my dad was very headstrong. Like, no, AOL is the way to go. I'm like, you, oh Lord, oh Daddy, I love you all. I love you and all. No, God bless wherever you are. But like you were a fool. You until you saw how things loaded afterwards, your mind was blown.
Yeah,
But
my parents just thought it was for us to download music. Like that's the only thing. To be fair, that's mostly what I wanted it for. Like I
yeah,
hope the statute of limitations on using Kazaa or LimeWire has run out. Hopefully it has. Um, but
I
back in
think
the
we can.
day,
I think we can.
this was
But like,
good.
I think we can all admit that we've all dabbled into like the devil's into like those services once in a while.
And it's like, but back then it, I feel most people didn't realize it was stealing, or
Yeah.
didn't want to think of how serious it actually was if they did realize it was stealing. I just thought, hey, I want to listen to Paint It Black, so I'm going to go on LimeWire, and in 16 hours, I will have the song downloaded.
So yeah, like I said, like you found the series, like, and then you brought the DVDs, like the bootleg DVDs, and and then you brought the legit DVDs, and then well, here we are with the
Mhm.
series. So I find that interesting, that's how you got started here, because I'm gonna take it with Bankas, and I'm pretty sure Bankas, you and me are gonna have like the same just that's the same kind of like origin story with this. So Bankas, why don't you go a little bit and discuss your origins with Saint Seiya?
Alrighty. Basically, I actually was trying to think because trying to think like way back then, I don't really have a very good memory. I don't really remember a lot of things of when I was a kid. But and Saint Seiya like is one of those things that I was trying to remember like if I could remember exactly when I started to watch it, or exactly how, or like the moment that I discovered the series. But truth of the matter is that I don't. And the reason for that is that me being from Mexico, I had the fortune when it comes to this particular series and a lot of anime series back then they were Saint Seiya was being transmitted through open television. Is that what it's called? Like for
Yeah,
the
open television.
okay, open television, and through Mexican open television. And it was one of those shows that like became a hit instantly with kids, and literally every kid from back then in the 90s, from 93, 94. I don't remember exactly when it arrived in Mexico. I don't remember the date, but well,
94.
yeah, 94. Okay, thank you. So from 94 onwards, it was something that it was on the mouth of every kid. So it was one of those shows that you didn't even ask. You had to watch it, and you watched it, and it captivated like the hearts of, I think, most of my class. In my particular classroom, like 90% of the kids in my class, they all watched and loved the series. So it was like a common day-to-day topic. It wasn't something out of the ordinary. It wasn't like finding like something weird and bizarre from another culture. Like we didn't even know that it was Japanese in origin, like until way later. I didn't know what the hell anime itself was. I just knew that it looked like it was a really cool, amazing cartoon, and I fell in love with it back then. So I don't actually remember when I discovered it. I just know that it's been a part of my life since I was very, very young, and it's been there since then. The thing that I thought that might be more interesting regarding my history with the franchise is, okay, I've known it since I was a child, but so do a lot of people, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they, like, maybe they watched it when they were young, but that's about it, right? Like it's just like, yeah, I feel nostalgic for this thing that I watched when I was a kid, but I don't particularly have any strong feelings towards it now. The thing that cemented my particular love for the series were a couple of things, and this had to do with the Hades OVAs. Because I always liked the series, but like it passed. Like new things came out. I was growing older, and like it was just one of those memories, right? And then we learned, or I learned, that there were other episodes, that there were new episodes appearing, and this is when the DVD bootlegs for the OVAs started to make their way over here. And I was able to get them, and my mind was blown away because, oh my god, the story continues after Poseidon, and that like literally blew my mind away. And like the thing that reignited my love for the series was the OVAs coming out, because obviously they didn't come out all of them at the same time. They were coming out gradually as they were in Japan, and as they were coming out, I found them in my local Yoho boat location. and
We like to we have a term that me and my other friends we like to call the methods.
yeah,
We found it through the methods network. So yeah, if it makes if that makes it easier, we just like if it makes it easier, just say you found out on the methods. Wink, wink.
all right, the methods. Wink. I found that like every time they came out, I bought them there, and around that time, because that's what it reignited like the passion for a lot of people here for the series, and that led to a publisher that was named because it doesn't longer exist. There's actually a really good, interesting story about that that Pollux actually knows quite well. Anyway, the editorial Grupo Editorial started to publish manga here in Mexico, like a lot of series and a lot of licenses, but Saint Seiya was one of them. So that's when I first kind of like discovered that difference between animation and comic books, like from Japan, and that's when I started to become more interested in anime and manga itself. And when I saw that there were comics about it, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta get them. And I started to get the manga for it. And the moment that I started to read it, the moment that I realized just how, despite it being the same story, just the number of differences between the anime and the manga blew me away to a degree that I think that's the thing that cemented my obsession with the series. And from there, like there have been moments in which I'm not as obsessed and not as into the series as I am, for example, right now. It's one of those things, right? Like, for example, you have something that you like, but for a period of time, maybe you're not that much into it, or you look into different things. It's always been like that, but it's always been something that I care for and that I like, even if like the intensity and passion for it kind of like varies in degree. But it's always been there. And the thing that once again reignited my passion and my love for it was Next Dimension. When I learned that it was going to have a sequel and a continuation, that's when I once again got into the series, and like that's I've been in that kind of degree ever since then.
All right, and yeah, like like just like you, Benkos, I too lived in Mexico, and I lived between Mexico and the United States. So, and one of the things that was interesting is I learned English first. I didn't learn Spanish first, so I learned a lot of English thanks to like television. And one of the things, I had some friends that knew Spanish, and I was, and like around the time I was learning to talk I was talking a lot more Spanish and whatnot. That's fine. But I understood more than I did clock it. So it's like I knew what was going on. And a friend of mine, we were playing just video games one day. We were just it was like it was on our like I think it was on like a spring break. I don't know when exactly, but I remember it was a spring break day because like it was in the middle of the day that we were watching. We were just playing video games, and my friend's like, "No, we gotta stop what we gotta do because I gotta watch something." And we stopped everything. We stopped everything cold. We had to turn off everything, or we wrote down every password. We wrote down because I think we were playing Castlevania 2. We were playing Castlevania 2. We wrote down the password, and we turned off our Nintendo, and we started to watch. And then he turned on the TV and he put on a channel, and we were watching the very first episode of the Asgard arc, and that was my very first episode of Saint Seiya I ever watched. And it was funny because like he for him was like, oh, it's another repeat, but for me, I was entranced. And from that day forward, like I didn't know what was going on. It looked insane, and I wanted to seek out more. And just randomly one day after that, I just found it, and I just remember the time, remember where the channel was, and all that stuff, and I started becoming more invested into it. And it was almost like as I got started watching it, that was like the beginning. Like that was like the very, very like beginning when it started going from like a big thing to like the biggest thing ever. So it was a topic that everybody talked about. It was something like it was in the mouths of all the kids. It was something that we would discuss in recess or like whenever we got free time. That was something that we would discuss. Like, oh my god, this is what happened with this guy, blah 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 blah. And yeah, and so I kept watching it, and was one of the cool things about it is that like the new episodes will air every Saturday, but they would repeat all the episodes like every Monday through Friday. So I would have like I have a VHS of like just all the episodes of that week, and I just go through all of them. And I got caught up to where they were in the actual series eventually, and and I understood what was going on and all that stuff. So it was really cool, and I drank that Kool Aid like you will not believe. I had all this. I had all the pog caps. I had all the cards, all the paraphernalia you can think of. I had so many action figures. I had all that stuff like when I was growing up. So I was like, I went all in and let all that stuff. So and one of the biggest regrets, like when I moved here to the United States from Mexico, I lost a lot of that stuff. Like when I came here, and I was just like, oh, son of a. And yeah, and what we kind of rekindled it was actually exactly that. Like I found out, like I was more invested in the internet at the time, so I knew what was going on with series outside of like what happened with Saint Seiya. I was like, okay, rather I knew there was stuff after Poseidon, and I was very immersed and really interested into knowing what was going on. So like I deep dive onto those like GeoCities websites and your Angel Fire websites. I went deep, and like there wasn't really much to all of that at the time. Nowadays, like nowadays it's just common knowledge, all that stuff. That the stuff like oh my god, there was something after Poseidon and all that stuff. But what really kind of like got me back into it was like when he announced, because I knew that there was something else after Poseidon, but I was like wondering like, oh man, like it was one of the things like whatever, I'm out of this anime. There's other stuff I can get into, and all of a sudden, like in some December day, they just said, "Hey, we're making Hades." And like, wait, what? Hades? Excuse me? And just like around the same time that with Kamen Rider Furry, he started getting those VHSs for like the regular series. I was getting not the VHS, the bootleg DVDs of the original series. I was getting the bootlegs of the Hades arc. So that's fine. I find it kind of interesting that on that same time period, you were getting the original series. I was getting Hades. So I kind of respawned my love for it. Soon afterwards, then afterwards, the series started airing on Cartoon Network, and I was watching it, but I was just like, oh my god, what is going on with this show? But it kind of became like a thing afterwards. Like I just said, hey, this is a great show. I kind of want to keep the love for this show going, and it was something that I kept on like championing for so long. And two things kind of happened to my favor. Well, actually, three things, but one of them is kind of like a really bad thing. My I'm gonna get real with you guys for a few minutes here. My and this is actually the anniversary is coming up really soon. As a matter of fact, in 2008, my my dad passed away, and there was a time where I was thinking to myself, like, what do I do with my spare time that I have? Because at the time, out that there was, and it's still going on. That there's issues going on where I don't have a job right now, and like this is like practically these podcasts is my job at the moment, and I was thinking to myself, like, what do I do in my life? What do I do to at least wait until like these things that are pending in my life are done, so I can get started, working in the field and whatnot, or getting services and getting some help that I need. And for the longest time, I wanted to start a podcast about Saint Seiya. And I just one day, I just said, like, I was on Amazon one day, and I saw some equipment, so a new microphone and new stuff, and I said to myself, "Let's do it. Let's do it." So in early 2020, I launched the Saint Seiya Cosmocast, and it happened to be around the same time that the CGI show was starting, and also the original show was on Netflix. So I had a huge advantage at the time that there was more people in the English speaking world watching it through a method at the time that was actually like a lot of people would prefer. Before Netflix became kind of a tire fire that it is right now. And for me, I felt like even though I was doing it by myself, I was happy about it, but I was still dealing with a lot of like mental issues. Still am. And then I said, what, I need to seek out some other people, because I think with other people, I think it bounces a lot better with all this. And then Kamen Rider Furry, but before even coming on the show, he's been like, we were back and forth, and I told him, why don't you come on? Why don't you come on? Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? And he came on,
Little
same
did
with
you
someone
know.
else, and then we things get started, and then, well, the things that happened with you in your personal life kind of forced my hand, and then that's when that's when Ben has gotten in contact with me, and here we are. Here we are, here we are 6 months later, and you're about to hit your year mark here, Kamen Rider Furry. So that's kind of like all the origins of the show, kind of the origins of where we came from and all that stuff. So he kind of took care of all that in one fell swoop.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
did it.
um
It was all
I
me.
wanted
I'm just kidding.
that's fine. No, no, no. You contributed it, and I do really appreciate you guys coming by. And like, I can't stress this enough that you guys are really cool about coming on here and doing all this stuff with me and all that stuff as well. So, but regardless, there's a lot of things that I think it's a good way to transition to where we're gonna go next, which is, I figured, like, this is something that Ben has brought up, and I think this will be an interesting thing to talk about here. And that is like the current state of where things are right now with Saint Seiya in terms of like what's available. Because there's a lot right now. Believe it or not, like, you may think that there's not too much going on, but there kind of is. So I figured we spend a few minutes here before we go on to our episode topic to discuss like just what things are available right now, to like digest the word Saint Seiya, either here in the United States, internationally, or in Japan, even though that does count as international, but outside of Japan, and here in the United States. So I want to start off first with like talking about what's available here in the United States, since I do have kind of like a general knowledge of what's going on here. Concerning the actual status of the TV show itself, the original anime is in the ether somewhere. We don't know who's gonna pick it up, and I do hope that someone from some company, hopefully some company that's not, that may or may not be named after a certain sushi roll, can help us out in getting the series on their services. Hint, hint. So with all that said, they do, however, have the rights to publish the CGI series starting with the second season, and they are going to proceed with what I presume would be the second part of the second season sometime this winter. They haven't announced a date yet, but I'm assuming it'd be sometime before the end of the month or end of next month, either in February or March. That's when they most like putting out the episodes. So when that comes on, we are gonna go back on that train again, whether we like it or not. Even though we've all agreed that like the second season, the current series, Battle for a Century, vast improvement over the first.
True.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
So that's good. So that's one thing. If you want to go back and torture yourself, you can go on Netflix and watch that first series. your mileage may vary. I'm not going to encourage it, but it's there on Netflix. At least that first series, and then second series, and then everything going forward, it's going to be exclusively on Crunchyroll. We have a live action movie that they said it's going to come out in 2023. We saw a trailer for it in December, and they've not announced a date yet. They've been very coy about it, but they've heard different dates being thrown around either, and everything seems to be zeroing in on sometime in late June. There looks like that's what the projected date from a lot of sources that are like close to this series. Like I believe Diego Trico has said that like by the end of June, they're predicting that's when that's when the movie's gonna be released. Same way, I believe the executive producer has said like sometime in June they said that the movie might be coming out, but we won't know anything about that until they officially say anything. And your dates might vary from like wherever you are in the world. Some places get movies earlier than other places, especially on a movie that's like, well, it's a kind of an untested franchise here in the United States. Other places might get it earlier because of its name value and recognition, like maybe somewhere in Mexico, South America, Europe, and all that stuff. You might get it before we do United States. So whenever anything pops up with that, we will inform you. Just as like we had that special episode with Benjas where we discussed it, and also Kamen Rider Furry as well, which was an awesome episode. If you haven't listened to those episodes as well, in terms of manga, we actually have two options. I'm surprised that we actually have two options that you can check out right now. The first option right now is the original manga. The original manga is, while it's out of print, it is available on the Shonen Jump app, which is, I believe they just raised the price from like $1.99 to $2.99, but that's still very good considering if you're just gonna get it for Saint Seiya, it's still worth your value. And since I also follow a lot of other series like Chainsaw Man and all that stuff, it's a Chainsaw Man and Spy Family and those series. It's a huge benefit for me because I get a day and date at the time. So in addition to getting the complete Saint Seiya experience, I get to also read on the day that gets released like Chainsaw Man, and that's like my jam right now. Same with Spy Family. I think those two series are just like, oh my god, I love reading and I love watching both of those series. So I'm really happy that I get that access to that like on the day when it comes out, and also can go back to previous issues as well and read all that stuff as well. For something physical, we do have Saint Seiya Show published by Seven Seas Manga, and just recently we learned that the last issue 16 just got published here in the United States. So if you're looking for a complete Saint Seiya experience, especially a different take on Saint Seiya Show is a must with that one. And if you want to just watch all of it, I mean not watch all of it, want to read all of it, it's now completely available in English. So that's one really cool thing. That's like if you're looking for something for a manga, that's I wouldn't say there's some things that are different, but there's a lot of things in spirit that still is Saint Seiya, but it's different enough that it's its own unique experience. That it comes recommended. Not so much the anime, but the manga is actually really good, and I highly recommend that. So there's that. Obviously, there's a ton of mobile games. There's mobile games out the butt right now when it comes to Saint Seiya. You have Saint Seiya Awakening. You have you have that one game that's I forgot the name of it. It's not it's like a idle game. Not idle like idle. It's like idle as in like you can put your phone down and you get stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then there's Burning Cosmos. I don't know. Some guy at that Bandai Namco's hasn't flipped the switch and turned off that game yet, even though they said the game was supposed to turn off. And yeah, that's as terms of as much as you can get with in terms of mobile games. In terms of merchandising, that's where everything you get. That's where all the money comes in, as Yogurt would say in Spaceballs. In terms of that, the DVD, you have the Blu-ray. You have the Blu-rays currently available from Discotech, which is the first 4 movies of Saint Seiya. They're subtitled only, and you can watch those also on various on-demand places. I don't know for a fact that they partnered up with Amazon Video, So you can watch those for free on if you have an Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime. Don't worry yet as to like anything else concerning the series in terms of like physical media. And in terms of like toys and stuff like that, obviously, of course, we have we have the Saint Myth clots, which I think they come out a few weeks or a few months after their initial release in Japan. So so you can check out like Big Bag Toy Store, Amazon, wherever you buy toys, and that's an official that's officially sanctioned by Bandai Namco and Tamashi. You can pick those up as well. And recently, too, we were discussing this off air that there's another series that Bandai makes as more budgeted figures based on like some like more highly profile animes. And one of the series in this particular line is Saint Seiya, and this series is called Anime Heroes. And currently, they are reissuing the first 3 figures, which is Iolios, Saga, and Seiya. And I think you can find those like pretty much everywhere if you like look around. Like those are like more readily available. They're $20 for a $20 action figure. They're really good. Like as someone that collects action figures, like if you want to get like the Rolls Royce, like the be all end all, you pick up a myth clock. But if you just want something just on your desk that's just posable and stuff like that, the Anime Hero figures, not bad. They're not bad at all. Like they're kind of wonky, but there's kind of an inherent charm to them as well. So they look really cool if you're having like in a collection of like other things as well. So if you're like one of those collectors that's like, okay, I want to collect, like I collect, I want to collect these figures, but I don't have that much of a budget. These are like great figures to have, and like they fit also really well with like your Marvel Legends and not so much of the DC multiverse figures, because I think multiverse figures are 7 inches as opposed to 6 inches. So those are like absurdly big compared to the other figures. But like if your average 6-inch action figure line, they kind of scale really good. Well, if you're one of those like 6-inch collectors that collect like Marvel Legends and whatnot, or G.I. Joe Classified, or Marvel Legends, or anything else that Hasbro makes, or whatever other company's making right now, they pretty much that Saint Seiya fits in really bad. That's about it. Am I missing anything else here, at least in the United States wise? Kamen Rider Furry?
I was
You
trying to
mentioned
think.
the Crane game figures, right? Yeah, I know that for a while there was a rumor that we were going to start getting stuff on Premium Bandai, because last year they released some of the I think they were Cardist cards, some kind of like Japanese exclusive card game. They released a binder that came with some like specialty cards. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to start getting stuff on Premium Bandai," but we haven't yet. So, yeah, that's pretty much all as far as what you can get over here. I mean, there are websites that you can import stuff on, which I know technically isn't available in the United States, but websites like AmiAmi and Hobby Search and Hobby Link Japan are legitimate retail stores. They're not proxy service, because proxy services scare people a lot, I feel like, or intimidate people a lot, because it's a few extra hoops to jump through. So if you were just looking for you just want to order your own thing, AmiAmi, Hobby Search, Hobby Link Japan, those kind of websites have a lot of the spirits, or the what are they called? I'm completely blanking on the name of them. The
Tamashi Nation figures.
Yeah, like the more expensive ones, they do sell out really, really, really fast though. Like I had an alert for Thor and sold out before I could log on to the website and click add to cart. Maybe for the best, because I don't have a lot of money right now, but I really wanted him because he's really big.
Oh yeah, no, I don't blame you. I love those figure arts myself. Like, oh my god, they're hitting out of the park with those Marvel ones. I swear to God. But that's a discussion for another podcast, which is called the Saturday Morning Squad, and we can discuss all we want about those per show. But regardless, like that's what's available right now for the most part, and like here in the United States. Benjas, you have a little bit more your ear in like stuff like Mexico. So what is available right now in Mexico that people can pick up right now in Mexico?
Well, right now here, the newest edition is the newest edition of the Saint Seiya manga, the final edition, which is the revision that Masami Kurumada is making to his entire manga. 5 volumes have been published so far in Japan. These have been made with the intention of correcting certain character dialogues to make the story more cohesive, as well as certain corrections to certain drawings, like that were anatomically incorrect, or maybe they did not make sense, like, for example, initial ideas that Kurumada later corrected. In order to give it a more cohesive coherence, he's making those corrections, as well as including, which I think it's like the biggest part of these editions. They're going to include there are 3 mangas, additional mangas that Kurumada published throughout the 2010s, which are Episode 0, which tells the story of how Aioros escaped from the sanctuary, which is ironic because we have like 10 versions of that story told in different mediums, but we never really saw in the manga, in the actual original story, how it happened. That manga tells the story of it, and that comes in the first volume of the final edition. And we're also gonna, I suppose, that later volumes are gonna include what are Saint Seiya Origin, which dwells a little bit more on the actual background story of Saga and Canon, and also Saint Seiya Destiny, which you could say complements that story and gives it like a conclusion for the more background story for those characters. And those are probably going to be included in later volumes as well. That the first volume has of that edition has been published in Mexico, which is like literally this month. It was scheduled originally for October last year, but they had a delay. But finally, it came out. The plans for a second symphonic concert are in the making. The organizer has already confirmed that they have a planned date for September once again for this year. The Pegasus Fantasy Symphonic Orchestra 2, which is scheduled to take place in September. So if you have the possibility of travel and you're somebody that's interested in the music of Saint Seiya, trust me when I say it's an experience that it's completely worth being there. So take that into consideration if you have the possibility of traveling. The Kansenban editions are still available, as far as I know. As far as I know, they haven't sold out, so you can also get that edition as well of the manga. The original anime is available through Crunchyroll in Mexico and Latin America. There is no original. It's not in Japanese, unfortunately, for people that are more into watching it in its original form. Only the Mexican dub is available on it, but it's like the one way to watch the series as well. I think that also Omega is in Crunchyroll. The Saint Seiya show is also definitely there, and I think also Soul of Gold. They're all available through Crunchyroll to watch there. And I think those also, well, in terms of manga, we have say the Lost Canvas. I don't think they have restocked them yet because it's been a while since they were published, but you can still get the majority of the volumes in stores like that. You can get the original story in completed, as well as the guidance, which were published here. Saint Seiya Show, of the 16 volumes, 15 have been published, and volume 16 is scheduled to be published on the second quarter of this year, to be confirmed yet, but it is definitely coming out this year, so we're going to have that story completed as well. Soul of Gold, sorry, Episode G. Saint Seiya Episode G, the original one, has been completely published, and there was a re-edition launched, republished last year, so that's something that you can get available as well. And I think those are like the most important things that are available in commercial. Well, also several of the myth clots make their way here once they're a couple of months after they are launched in Japan. They make their way over here, so you can also get them here. I think those are like, in terms of merchandise, that's probably the most important ones to take into consideration. It would be just now the fact that there's something that I wanted to mention regarding the movie. We do have a date for the movie. Apparently, it might be official. Like, it hasn't been confirmed by the actual social media of the movie itself. But one of the producers, Rick Nathanson, on December 2nd, published. I think it's a tweet that says the movie is gonna be coming out on April 2023. So they haven't given like a official release date yet. But considering that he's a producer for the movie, it is very likely that it will be coming out on the day that he said.
Yeah, and like I said, like right now is all that stuff is kind of all up in the air until something's official. usually around April. That's when they have a convention called for like people that are in the industry for like movie theaters and stuff like that. They forgot the name. And usually that's when we get like major dates dropped as like when movies are gonna be coming out further along. So when that usually maybe that's when we're gonna get our official reveal of the date of the movie, if not earlier, if that's what's gonna happen if they are planning an April release. And there's also and like we mentioned earlier, there's not in addition to the original manga, there is so much like accelerating media too with Saint Seiya as well, because like you have the original series, you have you have Canvas, you have Next Dimension, you have Saint Seiya Show, you have Menkai Dark Wing, you have Re-Rise of. There's a lot of Saint Seiya like outside of the actual main series. There is so much like outside you can check out as well, like by other mangakas and other creators as well. And and I just remember too, in France, there's also Saint Seiya. There's also Saint Seiya Time Odyssey as well, which is another kind of like retelling with background of like other characters as well. I think they'll focus on Iki, I believe.
The first volume is apparently it's going to be 5 volumes,
Mhm.
and each one is going to center around the 5
Each of them.
protagonists. The first volume it tells a story centered on Iki. I believe the second
Mhm.
volume, which is scheduled to be released this year, is going to be centered on Shun. And I don't think that I don't think they've said which character they're going to be focusing on volume 3, but the idea is each one is going to center around one particular character, even though the other characters do appear in the volumes. Like the center of attention and of the story is going to be focused on each of the protagonists as the volumes go along, telling a specific story that involves the god Kronos in
Mhm.
Jerome Key's vision, with certain elements, is because this comic book is an official licensed product and it's supervised by Masami Kurumada. And while it's gonna tell its own story with certain things that are not canonical to Kurumada's story, like there are certain elements that they have consulted with Kurumada Pro, which you could consider like canon ideas that are gonna make their way to that comic book. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what they do and what those ideas end up being. So I'm actually pretty excited for that as well. Because yeah,
Uh,
as you were saying, like the Saint Seiya, like a lot of people don't realize this, but Saint Seiya is one of those franchises that ironically has a lot of projects going on and has a lot of projects been going on for a long time right now. Currently, the all the ones that you mentioned, at least we're talking about 5 to 6 different projects being currently made. Not every franchise can boast that.
I guess the only one that can get closest to something like that would be, say, would be like Fist of the North Star, where they have like so many spin-offs with featuring so many other minor characters, but have so many continuous series going at the same time. That's like that's kind of big, especially not just stuff in Japan, but also stuff internationally, like in France with Time Odyssey as well. So that's really interesting. It's like it's interesting. It's like Saint Seiya has expanded so far from its like the original scope of just being Japanese, and now it's just something that it's something that's international. Like we talk a lot about like stuff here in the United States, stuff in Mexico, and stuff in like other parts of the world, and so it's interesting to see. It's like the world is starting to get like trying to get it. The world is now starting to get a little bit more into what's going on with the series, and I do appreciate that this is what kind of where we're going with the series currently. Because one last thing you wanted to discuss was like what's been going on with Next Dimension. You said like Next Dimension might be ending soonish. We don't know. It's something we've been reporting on back and forth. So
Yes,
give us a little bit of an update on that.
very well. Once again, for those that might not know, Saint Seiya Next Dimension is the official continuation of the story. It's the official sequel, written and illustrated by its creator, Masami Kurumada. It has been ongoing since 2016 on irregular dates. Unfortunately, due to several factors, including the health and the age of Masami Kurumada, the project has not been able to have like a steady publishment throughout these years. However, it has been announced officially since last year through Masami Kurumada's official blog that the story is gonna conclude in the following 16 chapters that are scheduled to be published or to start to be published on spring 2023. Obviously, it refers to the publishing dates for Japan. I don't remember exactly what those months consist of. I think it's after April. So midway through the year, probably later in the year. But Next Dimension is scheduled to finish in this year. I think it's going to be 116 chapters or something of the sort. And it's going to encompass, with all the volumes that have been published, as well as the number of chapters per volume, it's going to consist of a 16-volume story. We don't know yet exactly what this entails, like 100% for sure. We don't know if this is like the end to the main story and where Masami Kurumada could end it, or if it's going to be the ending of this particular chapter of the story for them to continue into what has been expected by most fans and what has been alluded to by Kurumada himself, which is the fight against Zeus. Something that he had acknowledged to the producer of the Pegasus Fantasy Symphonic Concert. Media here in the Spanish-speaking world interviewed the organizer, who had the opportunity to speak with Masami Kurumada himself. Obviously, no official statement was given. This is just from the conversation that he had with them, but he knows that people are expecting that.
Yeah, it is something too that that Kurumada has spoken to in length with other people. I believe the voice actor for Seiya, Torufuya, he has mentioned before in conversations with Kurumada that that he want that's pretty much where they're going to be going with the series, where he wants to like face off with Zeus. So it's something that's something that's like kind of like in tone with what's been going on with like everything he's been saying so far. So it's like it's not really out of the ordinary hearing that. So it's like it's been known before, but it's like now we're kind of seeing kind of like the seeds of that kind of like being built already right now into the series.
Yeah, so it's like we don't know exactly. The only one that knows is Masami Kurumada. The man is crazy, so he might continue to work until he dies. I don't know. Most of us hope and think that it's like just like the ending of this particular part of the story for the beginning of the next one. But obviously, we cannot assure anything until it actually gets officially announced by him or by his studio. But the fact is that it's ending this year. So between nerves and excitement, that's like, I think that the main thing for many of us, because the official story is coming to its conclusion. We don't know if it's like the final conclusion or the conclusion to this particular part of the story, but it's finally going to conclude after how long has it been? 2006, 4, 10, like 16 years?
Yeah, so I was gonna say it's like 16 years.
Yeah, so
I'm horrible at math, by the way.
Yeah, so it's something. I think that's like the biggest news when it comes to Seiya, at least for in terms of like the manga part of it.
And I think that covers all of the bases as to what's been going on with Saint Seiya. I'm ready for you. I know you've been silent back there, and I'm pretty sure like you're just kind of digesting all this information. Do you have any thoughts so far on like everything that we've discussed so far? Anything I missed that you want to bring up?
No, not really. I just hear. I feel like not to get too sidetracked, but Benjas actually said something earlier that really struck a chord with me. This is sorry for going really really far back, but when he was talking about how he got into Saint Seiya, he said like, I'm not always super obsessed with it like I am now, and I think that it's not that I'm like disinterested in the franchise or anything like that, but because I so like last year was so intense, like focusing on Saint Seiya, and then we took the holiday break, and I kind of took a step back. So I just feel like I'm really far out of the loop with a lot of stuff because it wasn't that I was intentionally ignoring everything going on, but it's just that I was terrified of getting burnt out. So it's like, let me take a step back. So now coming in and realizing that the world doesn't stop just because I did, that kind of scenario. So it's a little bit
No,
overwhelming. So I'm just kind of trying to take it all in and digest it. And it's no secret that I'm not a manga person. So really just kind of taking a lot of this information about Next Dimension secondhand. So I just didn't have a ton to collaborate there.
no, that's fine. As a matter of fact, that was the idea of the break that I wanted to have. It was gonna be a lot more. It was gonna be a lot more later, and it was gonna be a lot more later. But the idea was like I'm in fear of us going through like burnout. That and like if you're gonna take a break and don't even think twice about like Saint Seiya, perfectly valid. That's perfectly fine. I didn't even think twice about what was going on in the world of Saint Seiya at all outside of like outside of like just doing other things as well. Whenever the topic came up, like with like other people as well, like you host a podcast of the Saint Seiya, I'm like yeah, talk about it. I dabble into the dark arts of Saint Seiya. I don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm saying, but when I talk, I know what I'm saying when I do this show. So I know a thing or two about a certain Saint Seiya. I don't, is it like is it like that? Is it like Superbook? Because it sounds like it has the word saint on it.
It's very religious. It's a religious text.
Yeah, it's like Superbook or yeah, I forgot the name of the other one.
It's the story about how Saint Seiya became the patron saint of weeboos and
Yes.
apparently Latin America.
Yes. But regardless, yeah, I mean, go on.
I was just gonna say he's not that far off.
No, I got a picture here that might be blasphemous. I'm pretty sure if I show this picture off, I'm pretty sure a lightning bolt's gonna come down right at me, like for the act of God itself. So himself was like, nah, you better keep that picture tucked away, just in case. I'm pretty sure I can get like it. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's like it's something that people would deem blasphemous. So it's like keep it to myself, myself. But yeah, I figured like we take this time to just discuss everything. And like I said, the idea of the break and all that stuff was exactly that. Don't feel bad that you got out of the loop and anything like that. No, that was exactly the idea. That you did exactly what I wanted you to do, and I'm proud of that because I don't want anybody here being burnt out by like anything because that's just the worst thing ever. And if you ever feel like, and like I said, like I always say to you guys, like in private, but like if at any point that you guys feel like you can't go anymore, you're more than welcome to take a step back and just take it easy. Like I completely understand.
And I've always been kind of a jack of all trades kind of person. Like I'll be really into something for a little while, and then I'll get obsessed with something else, and I'll go back to something I used to be obsessed with when I was 10. That's just how my personality's always been. So
you and me both, brother.
I think that's what aids to the other podcasts that we've been working on, because like the Sailor Moon one that we just started helps me balance out, and will hopefully, because it's one of the comments I get the most is that I bring up Sailor Moon in every episode of this podcast, so maybe that'll help me get some of that out. And then ancient anime, of course, just I can dabble in whatever. If I feel like doing a horror anime, I can. If I feel like doing a comedy or harem or whatever, we can kind of do whatever with that one because it's a lot more broad of a topic. So it really helps me balance out by having a lot of different things to talk about at different times.
Yeah, and like I said, like that would you saying, oh, you feel bad that I didn't follow anything with Saint Seiya. I'm like, no, don't worry. That's exactly the idea. Like I even told you guys, don't message me about anything. I want to spend time with the family. I want to sleep.
The real reason why he said don't message us is because we're not friends outside of this podcast.
No, I am no.
That was a joke. That was a joke. I promise.
No, but for real as well, I was like, no. I'm gonna I had to start another podcast just for that reason because I know I'm gonna like lose it if I just talk Saint Seiya. So I'm like, that's why I made the Saturday Morning Squadron. Was like, if I talk more Saint Seiya, and that's just my life, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose my mind.
Like if I was on more episodes of Saturday Morning Squadron, Jim and the Holograms would become my Sailor Moon for that podcast. So
yes,
it's probably best that I'm not on there often.
And I guess that's why too is like that's why I'm really obsessed right now with Chainsaw Man. Is like that's why I watch.
I've heard it's really good.
I love it. I love Chainsaw Man. Alrighty, we have like the topic is like just flown right by us, and it's like somewhere. Hey, like Australia with like Rob right now, my other host on on Saturday Morning Squadron. So we better better like bring it back a little bit, and let's start discussing about the episode blocks that we discussed. We talked about episodes 53 to 56 of the original series. You guys, hopefully you all saw it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, like wink. Yes. Come referring to the room. He just has his finger like he has his hands behind his back with his fingers crossed.
I have the Wikipedia like summary page pulled up. Yeah, totally. I remember.
Yeah, I mean, like it's so it's like let's dive right into these episodes, and so we get episode 53. Cassius is there is already in Sanctuary, and he's big, he's menacing, he's kicking Shiryu and Shun's ass, like decisively.
Yeah, like I was a little bit weirded out by that because I was like, we literally just watched a flashback where Seiya, before he even had his cloth, kicked his ass into the ground, and now he's able to take on two Bronze Knights that are like, not only are they like have their armors on, but also they've been learning. Well, I think that Shiryu's tapped into the seventh sense. I was about to say I think it was just Shun, but no, both of them have at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they both
But like,
touch the seventh sense at this
so
point.
like technically they've ascended beyond just being a regular old bronze saint, and yet he was able to like own them very quickly and very decisively. I was a little shocked by that because I didn't remember that happening.
Benjas, your
That
thoughts
is
so far?
oof. Okay, I'll keep it brief and I'll keep it not salty because this is one thing which I could probably go on a rant about. And we're starting the first episode of the year. I don't want to go on a rant. But I do have beef with that particular thing. And I was actually kind of hoping we would have done this last year because I could have gone on a rant then. But okay, so first to say, I'm not a fan of that scene for the following reason. Even before I read the manga, that scene never quite stuck. It struck a chord with me because it makes no sense. How is it possible that this guy that literally got destroyed by Seiya in the very first episode without his cloth on, now all of a sudden can not only go against two bronze saints wearing their cloths and that have already defeated in a way two gold saints? It just makes absolutely no sense. But guess again, this is padding made by Toei Animation for filler to prolong the duration of the episode, which is fine in theory, but it doesn't make sense in context even in the show. And that's usually the thing that kind of triggers me when it comes to filler made by Toei, because it completely goes against the rules established even in the anime itself. Leave the manga outside of it. It doesn't make sense within the show itself. And that's the thing that always bothers me with that type of filler. So seeing that scene there, despite the fact that I do like Cassius, it still makes no sense like being put there, and it creates that on the viewer, right? It's like, what the hell is going on? Somebody that actually watched the show from beginning to here is gonna be like what the hell, dude? Like seriously.
Yeah, and and I guess one of the things in the CGI show's favor, it's like at least in that, like he suddenly appears. I'm like, I'd rather take that than what they did right here. I will agree on that because it just seems kind of random. Like, wait a minute.
They could have easily like circumvented this by either having him take an alternate path to where he didn't bump into them, or having him bump into them and then them being about to fight and then him saying something like, wait, I have a plan, and then fade to black so that we're still in the dark about what he's planning to do. Well, mostly it was pretty heavy-handed, but I mean, like that way they wouldn't explicitly say what's going to happen, but that way he wouldn't have to confront them violently, because it made no sense. It made no sense. It was not a fight that he should have been able to keep up with, let alone win. It was just weird.
Yeah, and that is kind of weird. Another weird part that I found interesting, I wrote down in my notes here, is how did Shiryu know who Cassius is?
That I think is because he mentions it like in just one sentence, so it's kind of it makes sense for people not to notice that. But apparently, Seiya did tell them like the story of how he gained his cloth, both in the anime and the manga. So they don't know him like personally, but they know of him.
They know who.
All right, I'll hold my tongue on that one. I will hold that L.
There was like a one-off line of like him saying, because I think they asked him who he was. They said he's Cassius, and he's like, "Oh, are you the guy that Seiya fought in Sanctuary?" Just kind of implying that they had that discussion before, which makes sense because I'm sure they've all by this point kind of talked about their struggles with their training as kids to each other.
They all kind of trauma dumped all their info to each other.
But one of my biggest pet peeves happens almost immediately right after that, because I'm a Cassius fanboy because he's beautiful and I love him. So I could forgive that scene, even though it sounds like I couldn't forgive it. I could forget, but what I really hate is it's a trope. It's not just something that happens in Saint Seiya. It happens in a lot of shows where actually it happens twice in this block of episodes that we watch, where there's this one of our protagonists is clearly outmatched at the moment, and the enemy uses their super special attack, and they survive, or they're able to track it, and they're like, oh yeah, like in this instance it's Aeolios doing his signature attack with the spears of light that come down, and
lightning plasma.
yeah, and say it's like, "Oh, I was able to see it that time," and he goes, "I slowed it down specifically so you could see it," and it's just
I
like,
wrote it down. I wrote this down. I wrote this down. I wrote it down. I knew you were gonna say that. I wrote down here. Stupid idea to punch slower.
yeah, it's like I literally wrote, "I'm gonna slow it down for you, dum dum." But like what? But it also happens, like, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it also happens in like the next episode with Iki, because Iki during his fight, he gets attacked by one of the Silver Saints, which we'll get to, and the guy says something along the lines of, "You're really lucky that your armor is being strengthened by this volcano, or else you would be dead." And it's like, I just hate that trope of like, because obviously the show wants to show off the fancy cool new bad guy attack. They want to make them menacing, but they can't just immediately kill the main character off. So they have to have some kind of cheesy dialogue like that. I just really hate it.
Oh yeah, I'll get to something. Well, I'll get to that later. Oh man, I got thoughts. I got thoughts. If Benkas thought that he's gonna go on a rant, oh boy, oh boy, I got some thoughts here, man. I got some thoughts. But regardless, regardless, we get to that point, like going back to the discussion here. We have Seiya, who is still fighting Iodia, who is brainwashed by the Pope, and he's pretty much playing with, he's like a literal tiger playing with his food at this point. Like
Right.
for you to use a term that's way too fitting for what's going on right now. That he's just playing with his food, sound kind of like he's trying to go at his leg and telling him like, oh, I slowed it down just so you can see it, just so you can like what is going on here. And maybe I can imply that maybe a little bit of his humanity is still there, and that's what's causing him to like not fully kill him. But mhm. But eventually Cassius does makes his way to Leo Temple, and you think he's there to help out. You think he's there to help out Iodia, but no, he's there to help out. He's actually there to help out Seiya, and it's interesting how he does it. He does it in a way where he's not really trying to help Seiya because of Seiya. He's
No.
helping him because of Shina, and it's something that's like something I wrote down here. One of the things I'll give this the one thing I'll give this is that one of the things that like the most obvious thing ever. It's like why this anime is so good is that compared to what we had before with the CGI series, where it's like all of a sudden he kind of does it and he kind of analyzes like, yeah, I did it for China. We get to see a lot of that. We get to see a lot of his training and why he cares so much about China. And then like it was before that as well. We kind of went through like a lot of like the stuff that when he found China after the battle and he took care of him and he took care of her and resuscitated her and all that stuff. So it's very you get the impact that will happen later on becomes very very drastic. Like it hits you very hard. It hits you the hardest. And I think one of the most brilliant things about this episode and about this fight itself, where it's like you realize that he's not really like he still kind of has resentment towards Seiya, but he also realizes that for the sake of Shina, I better do the right thing. And it's something that kind of got lost in the CGI show. And I do appreciate that when I was watching this again, that like that all this stuff like the him going to that part was a little bit more impactful.
That I will give to the anime. It really it does a fantastic job because if you really think about it very coldly, he does it for an extremely selfish reason, and yet that scene managed to. I think the great majority of people that I know that like the series, they all like Cassius. And despite the fact that he's done something for extremely selfish reasons and for reasons about himself, you still sympathize with him, you still care about him, and most people really lament the death of Cassius. So I think it's brilliant when a show does that. Like even a character that is not doing it for the most noble of reasons, but you still care about him.
Well, I think one thing, because we talked about this with the CGI show, and I believe it's been a while, but I believe that Benjas, you said that the same thing happens in the manga, or a really similar thing happens in the manga, where because the one thing that we haven't touched on is that somebody in this instance somebody's going to have to die, because the curse or power or whatever that is on Leo right now is making him go berserk until he kills somebody that he sees as enemy. And right now, the only person there is Seiya. So the plan is for him to kill Seiya before he can snap back out of it and turn normal. but of course Cassius steps in, and Cassius basically like berates him into attacking him, so that his aggression is now on Cassius. Cassius dies, and that breaks the spell. But in the CGI series, and I believe again, if I'm remembering correctly, in the manga, it only temporarily breaks the spell, and then he goes back, and they have to kind of do everything all over again. I think that the spell being broken when Cassius dies made it much, much more impactful. And I know that that might be a controversial statement. I'm going to make a couple of controversial statements today. Apologize in advance. But I feel like it makes it more impactful because in the CGI show, it felt a little bit cheapened that like 30 seconds after he died, Leo was back to being a jerk and trying to murder Seiya again. It felt like, why did that even happen? What was the point? Like, I understand it, you could come at it from the perspective of, not every noble act is going to be rewarded. Not every noble, like sometimes even the most noble of acts can be in vain, and it can go down that route. But it just felt so much more impactful that his death actually solved the problem, and that he died for a reason, and it wasn't meaningless. That's how it felt to me in the CGI show anyway.
I actually kind of
Yeah.
agree with you because, like, in the manga, like, despite the fact that it's not that well executed in the CGI show, it basically pretty much it's that way in the manga how it happens. Like Cassius, like for example, here's how it goes in the manga. Like Cassius doesn't fight Shiryu and Shun, but he does appear to him, and he does explain to them that Ioria is under the control of the Genro Maoken from the Pope. He goes inside, and then that's when he proceeds to basically he talks a little bit before he basically commits suicide by doing what he did in the CGI show, which is encrusting his hands onto his stomach, and he begins to die. The idea being that witnessing his death will free Ioria from the spell, and that way he'll be able to save Seiya. In the manga, Ioria also does not. He doesn't really gets broken from the spell. He basically is kind of like laughing it up. That angers Seiya to the point where he raises his Cosmo enough to be able to deliver a blow to him that finally snaps him out of it, because Cassius dies as he's doing that. So when after Seiya attacks Ioria, Cassius dies, and that's when Ioria comes back to his senses. But I do agree with that. The fact that I think it was a little bit better done here, because all that build up that they did, like the showing him how his training was with China, like those moments of him taking care of her, and just the way that he sacrifices himself, like by receiving Ayoria's attack full on front, makes it a better execution for an emotional scene and has more impact in the anime than it does in the manga. So in that regard, I agree with you.
So yeah, I mean, like, but before that, before the death, I just wanted to bring up one last thing. It's like, as I watched this series, I kind of realized as I watched everything before that, I kind of stopped and I said to myself that there's a lack of like reused animation. Like there is reused animation. Like let's not kid ourselves here. There is some reused animation if you look closely, and like. But I feel like they do a lot of that in the CGI show to like get around a lot of it. And here, like I was watching the fight. I was watching the fight between Seiya and Ioria, and it was fluid. It was very, very fluid and very, very like you felt like the animators were putting all their were putting their all onto this. And props to them. Like we like we made dog on the animation. There is going to be some really dog animation we're going to see right now in these next couple episodes. But to say that like these episodes with as they fight Elia were not really well done animated wise, it's it's a complete lie. It's just bullshit, because it's like some of the best animation, and they really took their time to make sure that it looked right, and also it made the impact of a lot of things a lot more meaningful with how good it looked. Because if it was like something that they threw away, I think a lot of the impact would lost. So I mean that closes it out. Is there any other detail I'm missing about this episode that we haven't discussed yet?
Not that I think it's noteworthy. Like the episode ends with them mourning Cassius, and then we like kind of prepare for the next one.
I think I will say the one last thing for that. I love that like it was like the last parts of that, like the last minute or so of that episode, complete silence. Like Cassius is dead. Iota draped his cape around him. No one says anything, and then the only thing you hear is no, you don't even hear the light extinguish. It just goes off, and I thought that was really brilliant from someone that that likes movies and stuff like that. I was like, oh, that is cinema right there, cinema. Somewhere out there, like Marto's crazy. He sees that scene and he's just like wiping a tear from his eye, like, oh my god. Beautiful. All right, so episode 54. All right, so like we're still like they're getting out of the temple here, and but during this time we cut to Iki, who's at I thought felt on.
Oh, wait. Before we have to address Aeolia's magic healing ability that comes out of nowhere because he shattered Seiya's leg, and Seiya just kind of forgot that his leg was broken and tried to walk and then just like fell over. And Leo just walks over and puts his hand over it and magically heals him because that's something he can do. I wasn't aware that he had healing properties, but okay. It was a little bit weird to me. I just thought we had pointed out because that.
Yeah, like that's like a thing that is worth like discussing and criticizing because that's something that it doesn't really happen very often in the series. Truth be told, it's one of those things that Kurumada does it when he needs to in the story. But it has been implied that Saints do have like healing capacities to some extent. Like we could probably discuss that like later in the episode because there are like 4 or 5 different healing techniques that the Saints have at their disposal to heal another person using their Cosmo. But yeah, basically it's something that kind of like gets used that one time, and I don't remember if it gets used like that specific way again. But yeah, Saints do have healing capacities, but it's like kind of a not too well defined in Universal.
Yeah, that's a lot of things in this show, just not defined very well.
Yeah, I guess
very well. We have 2 new enemies.
Oh Lord, we'll get to those. But yeah, so we cut to Iki, and I asked a question.
Yes.
So nothing happened. So like, when was the last time we saw Iki?
I don't remember if it was exactly in this one, but you remember like right before Jamie and kidnap Saori that Iki starts to act like a dick and he basically just fucks off. I think that's the time he appears in the anime.
Because
With the worst line ever. I just remember now. I was wanting to make sure if that was the last time we saw him. That's why I was like, was that the last time we saw him? Oh my god! Because like, if you're watching the anime and that's the only thing you're going with, holy shit! You're putting so much fucking trust in the Steel Saints. Think about what I just said there for a few seconds. He said, and I will quote, I believe Seiya and the rest will be okay because he's got the Steel Saints.
Well, remember, he really cared about them in his own way, is what Saori was. Because he got in a fight with Kyoka, I think is who he got in a fight with.
No, it was Seiya.
Because like Seiya was like, oh my god, he can take. It's like, so Shiryu can take care of himself, but no, like he's blind. Like, no, he's blind. He's just dead weight and all that stuff. But it's like,
that's right, because it was over Shiryu
and then
being blind, and he was telling him.
And then I'm like, I mean, he could have said anything else. Was like, he could have said like, I trust all you guys because like I trust you guys because like you guys are good fighters and stuff like that. So I trust you guys. No, he just said he's fucked up because like he's got the Steel Saints. He doesn't need me or doesn't need Shiryu at all. Like.
Yeah, and he's got the rest of those Bronze Saints too. Know, the wolf one and the bear one, the ones that we've grown to love and get to know through all of these episodes.
Ichi,
with their multiple appearance.
Yeah, but so it's like when I was trying to make sure that was the last time because like I know after that he did interfere in the fight between Saga and.
Yeah. That's what you're saying right now. He does appear, but like for a brief moment, like interfering with Saga when he was fighting the gold cloth of Gemini. That's like the last time he appears. But this is the first time he has dialogue since then, I think.
This is his first like proper reappearance in a long time.
Yeah. So he's on an island. He's on some island. I always thought it was Death Queen's Island, but it's like. No, this is well populated for it to be Death Queen's Island.
No,
he's a hellhole.
He's saying Cannon Island.
And then, so I wrote down here. Next time, Miki, don't tell me where you are. Just go there in like incognito, just hide there. Because apparently, when they get when the Pope sends his troops, they're like, okay, find me the village elder. It's like, I'll take you to Iki. Like, sakes. This is why you don't tell anybody where you are. Oh my god, I had to get that out of my system.
Well, these two episodes, 54 and 55, I really wish that we had gotten to these before the end of the year, because I feel like we're starting the year off by just complaining, because these are a couple of my least favorite episodes from this arc. But it goes back to what we've talked about over and over and over again, is that they continuously reiterate to us that saints are supposed to uphold peace and justice, and that they're supposed to be kind and benevolent. And meanwhile, these people come to town and beat an old man to death and throw a like 10-year-old girl off of a cliff after
Oh, I
she
wrote down. I
like
wrote down here.
bold-faced.
I wrote down
Oh,
here. Just hitting all the tropes to make them evil.
yeah, like she even point blank asked him, she's like, "Aren't you supposed to be like good and just and help people?" And they just like laughed at her or whatever. And I'm just like, it just goes back to that argument of like why the Gold Saints are doing obviously evil things and following the Pope, who obviously is really bad at hiding his nefarious intentions, and making them do these like questionable things and harm people, and they're not even blinking at it. And this is the most egregious one of it all, though, for me, is that these two, Lotus and Peacock, that I can't. And by the way, I was looking up information on them, because I only vaguely remember them. I remember Shaka had a couple of disciples that were basically Shaka light, essentially. Like they have, I mean, they powers in the same vein, and they have the lotus pose, and they do chants and stuff. So they're very obviously his disciples. But I couldn't remember a whole lot about them, and apparently, um, it wasn't Kurumada, but I think it was one of the directors. Like there was a big um argument, I guess, for lack of a better word, disagreement as to whether they're Silver Saints or not. And for a while they were like canonically Silver Saints, but like in the one of the big encyclopedias that came out with all the information, they're specifically designated as other and not silver. So it's just very confusing as to who they even are. And then one of them isn't even a real constellation. Like Lotus is not a constellation.
No.
So I just don't understand why they're here. Why, like, I, it the entire fight feels so hollow, like inconsequential, because we know that they're not going to defeat him. Like in the fights with the Gold Saints, like especially if this is your first time watching it through, because at this point we're not sure if Yoga is going to live or not. I mean, it's a kid show, so most likely he's going to. But like if you're watching this for the first time, Yoga's been out of commission for almost 10 episodes now, and really has only been seen in one flashback since he got frozen. And so we know that when they're fighting the Gold Saints, it's like a life and death matter. But we know that Iki isn't going to be bested by two silver question mark saints. Like, so these two episodes just feel like filler in the worst way, because it just feels like we just have to trudge through this, because we obviously, like, I guess if you want to put a positive spin on it, because these two are basically Shaka light characters, he kind of gets the idea of what he's in for when he goes to fight Shaka. But it feels, I don't know. Am I making sense though? Like it feels so inconsequential that it doesn't even matter.
No,
Yeah.
and I'll get to something even worse right now. But go on, Benjas.
No, I was just gonna say I completely agree with what you're saying. There's just so many. With what you said about it being the worst kind of filler, like not even filler, it kind of has you like on your seat. You know, Iki's not gonna get defeated by these two guys, but even then, like if the execution had been maybe a little bit more intense, it could like put the doubt on you. But it's one of I would like to just say that like it's Toei being Toei when it comes to this series, like those stupid mistakes they keep committing by making them evil and stuff like that. But I do want to mention a couple of interesting facts about these two characters. But I go first, Ramses, before I go out, talk about
I
this.
want to say, I was to say, yeah, I'll give one thing. I'll give one props to this, like because like in theory, in concept, I like the idea of Shaka having his own cult of personality and people following him. I like that concept because I thought because at one point it's like this guy can easily be like this guy can easily just run his own religion if he wanted to. It was like, oh, there's a couple of guys under his own tutelage, like perfect. So I was like, in theory, in like the content itself, I like the execution. But go on, Benjas.
Yeah, like well, these two characters that we've been talking about, they're called Agora and Shiba. They are supposed to, as Kamen mentioned, Agora is supposed to be the saint of the lotus, which it's a constellation that doesn't exist. So one of those silver saints that they pull out of their ass. I think that it's kind of left ambiguous in the anime. They don't specifically say it, but they are intended to be silver saints. And the other one that actually does belong to a constellation, which is a oh god, I was gonna say Turkey Shiva, but no. I forgot the name of the constellation.
Peacock.
Yeah, Peacock. Thank you, Turkey. Anyways,
Turkey Shiva.
Turkey. Let's call him that for the rest of the
Same
episode.
Yeah,
thing.
Turkish,
perfect.
the Turkey guy. Anyway,
They're just gothic peacocks anyway.
yeah, these are characters made by Toei for the anime exclusively. But Kurumada did have a bit of a hand in their creation in one way. There is a sketch that one of the sketches that some people were able to get a hold of, like from a booklet of discarded sketches from Kurumada. There is a sketch where even though the faces are not defined and the entire body is not like completely built, he did make like the outlines for what both these characters look. So despite the fact that they're original characters for the anime, the appearance of them, they were created by Kurumada. Their appearance. Although they were called something else in the beginning. Agora was called Ragora, and Shiba was called Anaritsu. Like in the sketch that he has, like those were the names given to them. Then they were changed to what Toei used, Agora and Shiba, and there is a sketch by Kurumada of the peacock cloth, and it is basically it's almost exactly the one that Shiba wears in this series. So the cloth, you could say it's the closest thing we have to an official peacock cloth in universe for the manga, because Kurumada did make that design and it got adapted into the anime, even though it hasn't appeared anywhere else in the story. Those are the two trivia parts I want to say about these characters.
All right. So yeah, basically they go to they try to look for Ease, like hiding in the island, and then like first he fights a couple of goons, like couple like low level mooks, so those guys in like the brown armor, and then it's like no, the real enemy's right there, and then Genju, and just like this is where it's like. This is where I got to like have to get this is where I take each of you guys' soapboxes and go on mine. I said here, I wrote down here because I had to look for the note here. I said there, God, Iki, you suck if you keep on. What did I wrote here? Oh, God, Iki, you suck if you keep on jobbing for these grifters. And I'm like, yeah, like, oh my God, like you're supposed to be the most powerful saint, and yet you're like a mixed like if like he shouldn't be having these problems at all. Period. And he's having all these problems, and did someone at Toy just said, you know what, we need to like kneecap him artificially somehow. And there's something that happens later where like I'll believe it, but it's like when you're watching it kind of like as when you're watching it as is, it's like, oh my God, like this guy's supposed to be the most like powerful guy. He should be able to like in a blink of an eye, these guys should be dead, but they're not.
Well, they're in Iki's defense, because I'm an Iki apologist, because he, despite what my merchandise may say that I own, Iki's probably my favorite of the main five, and I know that's kind of a cop-out because he is like the OP one, but I really do like him. Him and Yoga. But anyway, we do eventually find out, I can't remember if it's at the end of this episode or the beginning of the next episode, that their power is being boosted by Shaka's aura, his Cosmo. Like he's sending his Cosmo to help paralyze and cripple Iki from afar because he's just that strong. So that was part of it. And I said that this is the worst kind of filler, and I read my notes, and something important does happen in the fact that he uses his Phantasm Punch on Peacock. Peacock, because Peacock's the one he fights first. And Peacock starts having a nightmare of having snakes all over him, and falls into a vat of lava, and is going, because as you may or may not know, hopefully by this point when he does that punch, it just makes you have to face your worst fears and basically breaks you mentally without actually doing physical damage to your body. But Peacock is able to overcome that because of Shaka's teachings. So it sets up a storyline that he's going to have to be more creative when he gets to, well, for this fight, of course, but when he gets to Shaka as well, he's going to have to be more creative if he wants to beat Shaka or any of the other Gold Saints for that matter, because they are on a level that are above his phantasm or like his like hallucinogenic punch attack. I'm really bad with names, but you get my point. But that's the only real, I guess, important thing that you could have here. Whereas it could have been just as interesting to see the exact same scene happen with Shaka, where Shaka pretends like he's falling for it and then like fakes him out. But whatever.
I will say this because like I'm looking back to my notes and like there was a line here I had to put this on repeat and like this is just like the most this line really broke me, like in terms of like this line, like I don't and because the way the actor said it, like I just couldn't stop laughing. He said, "I will make you suffer the full torment of hell, Phoenix."
I like how I like how Lotus was like warning him. He's like, it doesn't matter how many times you kill him, he'll rise from the ashes just like a phoenix. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of his name. Like, I mean,
Yeah, no
yeah.
shit, Sherlock. But no, but the way he said Phoenix, I was like, oh my god, dude, like dude, you're like here's the scene, here's everything the scene is given to you on a silver platter. Eat it, it's yours. Like just give it whoever dubbed this guy, like give him all the dubbing things. That the way he said that was like the greatest line reading ever. Thank you. Like I needed that.
Can we?
But I can't say the same. I can't say the same about the kid that they got to dub dub the little girl. I don't want to say anything bad, like because I love they're doing their best with what they got, but like you could have done you don't get a second pass on this one on a lot of these on your lines there, kiddo.
I will say that little girl's got insane upper body strength because she's holding on to the edge of that cliff for like an hour while he's over here fighting these people. She's just dangling from the side of a cliff while he's like fighting two dudes forever.
That's something that I don't really think about too much whenever I watch it. But now that you've mentioned it, it's one of the things that I never really questioned. But now that you said it, it's like, yeah, that kid must be really strong then.
Super upper body strength.
By the way, I do have to say something like it's kind of unfortunate because I shouldn't laugh. Like when I was younger and I watched that episode, I always it always almost made me cry whenever the old man dies. Like because I felt really bad for the young kid. But now that I'm older and more cynical, like the way that it is executed, like and the way that it goes in the Spanish dub, because she goes like abuelito, and then he goes and I was like. Oh no! Why? This is supposed to be really sad, and it is, but damn it.
I think they put a little bit more effort in the English dub. At least I'll give them that much. At least they put some sort of effort, but it's killed by the fact that the actress is like just like the actress like, grandfather, don't die, please don't die. I'm like, we got you. We need you at like a 5 or a 6, but we got you like -2. Can we get another pass on that take, please?
Yeah. So,
but
sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say,
no.
Really honest with you, these two episodes blurred together because I mean it's a two-parter and there's no real resolution at the end of episode 54. I don't think there was really.
I was gonna transition out. Believe it or not, I was transitioning us to the next episode. So thank you.
Yeah, like it's episode 50. Like I don't even remember exactly what happened at the end of episode 54. Because I'm looking at my notes, and my notes I just kind of like stop talking and just move on to the next episode. So I'm assuming that it just kind of ended unceremoniously.
No, I think it just ended. I think what ended with Iki being like, he's like, oh my god, how do I beat this? How do I beat this guy now? And it's like to be continued. Like, oh, okay, then we're just gonna right there. Cool.
Yeah, and so in the episode 55, I think my favorite part, and it's just because it's so 80s and it's so shonen specifically, because they don't want you to forget that Seiya is the main character. Like we're talking about Iki right now in these like couple of episodes, and he's who we're focusing on, but they don't want you to forget that Seiya is the main character. So every like 4 or 5 minutes, they cut back to Seiya and company at Sanctuary running up the stairs, and it adds nothing other than to remind you that they exist. Because like
Yeah, I wrote down the line here. Damn it, Shun, turn that shit off.
it shouldn't keep like they did it 2 or 3 times throughout these episodes where they're like running up the stairs and Shun will stop because he's like, I can sense my brother's Cosmo, but I can't reach out and help him. And it's because, Shaka's interfering or whatever. We find that out later, but they just kept doing it. They did it at least 3 times. And when I tell
Mhm.
you that by the last time, I was like, is anything gonna happen? Like, does this serve any purpose? We get it. Like, we understand. There's a lot of stairs. It's gonna take them a while to get to the Virgo temple. We get it. Anyway.
No, and the thing is, it's like there's not really much to this episode. Like it's like literally, it's like I hate to say this, but it's like they're trying to build us up, and eventually you figure out it's like, oh yeah, like Shaka's kind of like is kind of controlling these guys, and also he's kind of like manipulating Iki as well, so he's not at full potential. So he's like, he does the whole thing like, oh my god, I gotta look deep into all my cosmos. I gotta look for Athena and all this stuff. Even at one point, like Athena's like, I can't find you, man. Where the fuck are you? You turn on your GPS?
Well, that's one thing that I wanted to bring up is that maybe I'm just not understanding how this bow in her chest works, but I was assuming that like they were estimating that it was going to be 12 hours or 13 hours or how many it's 12.
Yeah.
It's going to be 12 hours for her to die because they're factoring in that she has this really strong Cosmo. So I was thinking that like it was slowly chipping away at her Cosmo, or if she like uses her Cosmo, it's going to speed things up. Is what I was thinking in my mind. But she's like straight up like astral projecting like several continents away, and I'm just like, girl, is that not going to speed up your death clock there? Like, I feel like it might. Maybe I'm not
That's
understanding how this works.
no, I don't blame you, but and that's kind of like the show not making a very good. It's not explaining itself very well. The manga's a little bit better, but even still, like there's a lot to be questioned there. The thing is that the reason why that happens, or
Oh
why
god.
theoretically Saori like cannot physically act, but she can sometimes still use part of her Cosmo, is that here she's still inexperienced, and she has reincarnated in the body of a human being. You could say that she's not in her goddess purest form, so to speak. But this is something that only gets like partially mentioned. Like it is explicitly stated that she reincarnates in a human body, and that kind of nerves her, if you will, if you want to look at it in one way. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things that only kind of gets mentioned a couple of times. It doesn't really get to explain too much. So yeah, I completely don't blame you for being confused on that, and the anime makes it worse because these types of filler adds to the confusion because she's doing stuff that she shouldn't be doing that never happened in the manga, and it's kind of like, okay, so which one is it? Can you act or can you not? So yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I wrote down. The reason why I freaked out because I finally found that. I guess I wrote down on my notes. I just saw because like I'm watching this. I'm watching this. I'm watching this like So I didn't stop like the recording, or rather I didn't stop like watching it. So I was like just watch. I was writing these notes with like while I had my eyes on the television, and I had to figure out like what my chicken scratch writing said, and I wrote down here as Athena was trying to look for Iki. I wrote down, is Athena trying to call collect, and no one's picking up for like a boomer ass reference. Take a
like
take a
this,
take a swig. Take a
is it
swig
like those?
if you understand that. Take a swig of whatever you're drinking because god dang you deserve it because like you gotta be your like late 30s or your late early 40s if you know what that just reference to.
Well, I remember those 1-800 collect commercials
Okay.
where they would it was from when I was really young, but where they would call collect and they would ask for first and last name, and they'd be like, Bob is my first name, and then it's like, okay, what is your last name? They're like, we out of baby it's a boy. And then it would get to the other person, they would be like, Bob, we had a baby it's a boy, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna decline it. And they're like, you don't have to do this workaround anymore because we have 1-800 collect or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that. So like maybe she was trying to do that. Like maybe she was just trying to like take the cheap method, be like, Icky, are you okay? Let me know.
Are you okay? Bye. But yeah, I mean, like I know, we're kind of glossing over it, and we're just kind of like we're making some snark comments about it. But to be honest, it really isn't much to this fight. Like, I mean, Ikki just kind of overcomes the odds and just beat these guys up, and that's it.
Well, what it really is without Shaka backing them up, they're just Silver Saints. They're just your average run of, well, depending on who you ask, they're Silver Saints. But yeah, they're not like extraordinary on their own. Like it's revealed. I have it in my notes. It's this episode where it's revealed. It's revealed that it's Shaka's Cosmo that's crippling him and paralyzing. And once Athena is able to break through and disrupt his concentration and get him off of you know antagonizing Ikki just kind of wipes the floor with them. Like it wasn't that difficult. They had to have Daddy help them out. Like it's like the little kids that can't. They said that they made dinner or they made breakfast in bed for Mom, but really all they made was a mess, and then Dad ended up doing most of it.
Yeah, yeah. That pretty much the end result. The mess is like pretty much at the end. He has to like pretty much like Ikki like I think has to like intervene in all of this. And it's like it goes back to the main point. It goes back to the same point we discussed earlier. It's like, what is your powers, woman?
She's just
So
an enigma wrapped inside of a mystery.
so I guess we can like I guess if there's nothing else with this episode, we can move on to episode 56.
Yeah, let's do that because I'm done talking about these two.
Yeah. So during all this time, if you haven't like noticed, because like I don't blame you if you haven't noticed, because they haven't tried to shove it down your throat at this point. During all this time, Seiya, Shun, and Shiryu are trying to go up trying to finally make it to the main temple of Virgo. They make it there, and they see it's a beautiful it's a beautiful place where it's like all these things. And I wrote down here, this is so much better than the Windows 98 screensaver we got in the CGI show.
Well, the thing is what annoyed me, and I know why they did it. They did it so that for the shock value. But at the end of episode 55, they show them walk in and walk through the doors and walk directly up to Shaka, and like it does that like dun, 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 and like
Yeah.
dramatic posing as they're walking up to him. But then when the next episode starts, they walk in and it's like this serene, lush wilderness, and I'm just like, hey, that's not what we saw before. But yeah, it does
Yeah,
look
it's
very
like
beautiful.
yeah, because like I said, like compared to the CGI show where it's like literally I remember saying it's like literally it's like why the fuck are they a Windows 98 screensaver?
And right after that, my favorite thing happens from this entire block of episodes. But it's a dub only thing because Netflix wanted to. So this is specifically in reference to the Netflix English dub, but I think Netflix wanted to like capture the older teen market with this, because we know this, and I'm sure you like who is listening to this probably knows as well. But like the Japanese demographics skew much older than ours do. Like it'll be a show for like grade school kids, but it's covering topics and showing things like blood and violence and that kind of stuff that would be more geared towards teenagers here. So I think that because there was so much violence and so much blood and stuff in this, they tried to capture that teenage market. So when they walk into the temple, Seiya's just like looking around, like not super impressed, and he says, and I quote, "This guy must really think that he's hot shit." I just
Thank
stopped.
you.
I stopped and sat down and I was like, I think we're gonna take a break for a minute. We've been watching, we watched 3 episodes back to back. We might need a break for 10 minutes or so now.
It says that in.
He says it's an English version.
Okay, that's really good.
This guy must think he's hot shit. I was like, Seiya,
Shit.
shut the fuck up. He's gonna literally beat your ass in about 30 seconds.
The worst part is here's the worst part. The worst part is that's on brand for Seiya.
Yeah, because he is a little like cocky shit sometimes.
Yeah, he's a cocky shit,
Oh
but
my
like
god.
but he's a cocky shit, but it's like that's kind of like that's a little tall on the nose.
But the reason why I say it's a specifically English thing and them deciding to skew it older is because Japanese technically doesn't have curse words. There's words that you can translate
Why?
as the equivalent to curse words, but they're often used in younger kids shows because they're not actually inappropriate. Like they're not overly inappropriate words. It's more like harsh language as opposed to something that you would need to censor over here. Like, a daytime television show, or especially not a kid show, would be able to say shit over here, but in Japan it's not that big of a deal. But it can also be translated to a multitude of different other just expletives or like
Oh
frustrated
Lord, yeah.
speech. So they specifically chose to have him curse here, which is just funny to
Oh,
me.
but then again, it's a double. It's kind of because it's kind of weird. It's like like in some things like it works. In this case, like I'm willing to give him like the pass. Like I suddenly had like flashbacks to some of the translations of like some of the earlier Sentais that like in the early aughts by
Oh
people
god.
that I won't mention. But like during those days, like they would like whenever they had to say stuff, whenever they had to like say something that's like very strong, they use coarse language. Like no, you
Yeah,
wouldn't
like
use that language.
the word kuso, like they usually say
Yeah.
it like very brooding and angrily. It literally just translates to you, but it's like you with implied harshness. So a lot of
Yeah.
times it'll be translated as you bastard, but when it's in the context of like Super Sentai or Kamen Rider, that's yeah, they're like again, they would probably more track for like a teenage market over here as opposed to the children's market that they actually are targeted to in Japan. But even in the teenage market, you wouldn't have them yell "you bastard," like you just wouldn't. So I remember those translations you're talking about, and I unfortunately still have to watch them because a lot of those shows never got subtitled by anybody else because it's such a niche fandom. It's getting bigger lately, but it's still fairly niche. So there's only a
Thank you,
handful of
Shout
groups
Factory,
that
for giving us better translations. That's all I gotta say.
well, I'm talking more Kamen Rider side of it. The Kamen Rider
Oh, okay.
licensing game.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Never mind. Never
there's
mind.
3 different companies right now that are licensing Kamen Rider, so
Oh God,
yay.
don't get me started. And we will know more like tomorrow if like they're gonna do any more. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
But anyway, yeah, so it was a very strong worded choice, and it cracked me up, but it also kind of makes me a little sad because I I feel like where we are today with kids media in the United States that there was back in the 90s there was the moral panic over violence, and you were having all these animated cartoons have like all the violence edited out of them or made to be much more slapstick or much more lighthearted. But now we're starting to get cartoons that are still aimed primarily at kids that show fighting in a realistic way, but kind of phrase it in a way like Saint Seiya does, that it's fighting for justice and truth and put a positive spin on it. And it's sad because I think that the negative language potentially say negative language, the coarse language that they use, although it's sparingly, that could still deter parents from wanting to allow kids to watch shows like this. And it just like it makes me a little bit sad that they could have just chose to word it differently, because I thought it was hilarious, but like when I sat and thought about it, I was like, that could have been the moment that your mom walked in while you're watching it and she says, okay, no more Netflix for you for a month and you're screwed over. Like if you're like a little 13-year-old kid or something like that, because that's something my parents would and did do during
okay.
my growing up of watching anime. Let's just say that they on the back of like 90% of anime VHSs and DVDs over here in the United States, there was a big sticker that said the age group, and if it said anything other than 13 and up, I was not allowed to buy it
Hmm.
because they
No,
learned
because
very
like
quickly.
maybe because my parents are a little bit more lenient. Because like literally, my mom walked in while watching the Fist of the North Star movie. Like she just looked at the screen. I'm like, your dad's seen worst.
Well, I mean, I'll save it for our other podcast, but and I've told it on Ancient Anime before, but I've gotten banned from the internet because of anime on
Yeah,
multiple
we've
occasions.
heard. I've heard that story. I'll put that
multiple
episode. I'll put that episode in the description.
multiple times I've been banned from the internet because my parents were very protective when I was younger. When I became a teenager, they really loosened up, and I was able to experience more media and stuff like that. But as a kid, oh man, like I had a tight leash, 'cause- probably for good reason because I was pretty unruly, but still, it was a
Yeah,
different world at the
but like I
time.
said, like I guess in my case, it's like I might get a weird eyebrow, like for example, like when my mom walked in during that scene with Misty, she's like, "What the? She watches cartoons, man. Care." But the one that always got me is like my mom just walked in while I was watching Fist of the North Star, the movie, and she's like, she looked at some of the fight, she just saw like a little bit of the fight, and she's like, God, your father just seemed a lot worse. And like, and I just think about it, I was like, he would just watch a dumb movie where like limbs are flying all over the place. That's on brand for my dad. Anyways, God bless my father. Anyways, let's keep on going here. So yeah, like they go in and they think that literally they think that the Seiya thinks he's hot shit. So they try to attack. The Seiya tries to go after him, which I wrote down. Seiya, you dumbass.
Yeah, he was just
Um,
sitting there. He was sitting there. They could have just walked past him. Like maybe he would have stopped them from walking past him, but they literally could have just kept walking. But Seiya was like, "No, I'm gonna beat this guy's ass for no reason," and just
and
it throws the first punch, and then Shaka reasonably reacts and also calls him out for attacking him unprovoked.
And then
God,
everybody else is like, "Oh my god, like we got to do something about it." They're getting their asses to place. And I wrote down here, it's a great way to. This is a better way to show Shaka's power than how we saw it in the CGI show. Again, because maybe because that's still fresh. A lot of this stuff is still fresh on my brain. That's why I keep on going back to it. But it's like I like my last frame of reference is the CGI show. I'm like, oh wow, they're actually doing a way better job here to kind of show off this guy's power than they did before.
yeah.
And then
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna transition this. I was gonna transition to the next point, but go on. So
No, I was
your
just saying,
thought?
I alluded to this earlier by me saying I'm gonna have some controversial opinions. I know that Shaka's incredibly beloved by the fandom. I really don't like Shaka. Like I don't. I've just never been a fan of him. I don't like the fights for him. I don't like how hyped up he was, and really you only see him fight for a couple of episodes. Yeah, he comes back in other media and stuff like that. But as far as this storyline is concerned, like he seems they build him up to be really formidable, and then I don't know. I don't know if I was just disappointed, didn't like his style. He just doesn't click with me. And when I see other people talk about their favorite Gold Saints, if it isn't always Leo, then it's Shaka. Like those, and I'm over here like I like Aldebaran. He's nice.
Don't worry, I completely get you on that. Shaka, like in that regard, Shaka is always one of the like he's like in the center of the freaking discussions of like who is the most powerful Gold Saint, Saga or Shaka. Yeah, I get what you mean. I do I do really like Shaka, but at the same time I completely understand. Like not every character has to be everybody's cup of tea, you know.
But he's so beloved in the fandom. Like always, people are always talking about him and hyping him up, and like I mean, I don't know. He doesn't speak to me for whatever reason.
I get you. You know what? I have something similar to in Doctor Who. Like it's something like, for example, with me, like when it comes to the discussion of like the Doctor, the 10th Doctor is like one of the most popular. Like he's always either the first or the second place in terms of popularity for the incarnations of the Doctor. I hate the 10th Doctor. Yeah, so yeah, I get what you mean. Like there's a character that, despite being like in the common, even though like a great portion of people kind of like gravitate towards a certain character, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to fly with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
I just
perfectly
don't.
your feelings are perfectly valid. Like I'm not too hot on him. Like I like the concept of the character, but like there's other characters I would like pick over him. I wouldn't say he's like the worst, but he would not like break top 10. I'll say that much right now.
I feel like he was because people have been talking about him for a little bit now, and we've been kind of like his two little lackeys built him up, and even Iolia was like, "Hey, don't let him open his eyes. He's on level with the gods." And he's built up so much, and I just don't think that it for me lives up to the hype of what they were like building him up to be. I don't know. I just thought I would mention that like I don't vibe with this character.
Fair
Okay.
enough.
So so yeah, so the Saints are getting their asses the Bronze Saints are getting their asses kicked, and then Iki appears. Lo and behold,
He's
and I wrote down
angry.
here because if you take the show at its value of what it's showing, wow, he got there really quick.
Yeah.
He got there
Meanwhile,
really
it
quick.
took Seiya and company like 3 days to climb those stairs. Iki like traversed several continents in the matter of minutes.
Yeah, because like I said again, like if we were to take the show at face value of this particular show, if we take it at face value, wow, he got from one place, he got from one part of the world to the other in like no time. If you're like watching the manga, which is if you read the manga, like we haven't seen him since that. We haven't seen him for like a while. So it's like, and that would be like that would be technically the first time you see him. Like, okay, that makes sense. But since 2 episodes with him, like, oh my god, you got here really quick, dude.
In all fairness, the Saint Seiya anime is just like 80% flashbacks, so those just could have been flashbacks. He could have been traveling for a couple of days.
I mean, he could be. So
He's
yeah, he
accurate.
appears and he appears. They kind of they fight a little bit, and then this episode ends with Iki being sent to the six hells. And I wrote down because like one of the thing one I wrote down here as like kind of like a little as like a thing that just popped up when I was watching it. It was that one of the hells that they described, the one where it's like essentially it's like Valhalla. I wrote down here. Good to see that that we're actually ripping off Fazetta. Because like I look at something, I'm just like, this is like Frank Frazetta drawings that they just traced over.
One of them was literally just like the hell where they're gonna send all the furries. Because they said like you turn into animals and you become mindless, and I was like, those motherfuckers are insulting my people.
You'd be like, two, please.
I was like, well, at least now I know where I'm going. Thank you, Shaka. You've enlightened me.
Well, that's his ability. He enlightens people.
Oh yeah, and he can.
And then one of them just going back to like regular ass life. Like, dude, like it's already hell as is. Just like don't send people there.
And then in the final realm of hell is the COVID hell, and that's where we're all staying for now.
Literally, oh god,
too real.
And then like, and so like, but yeah, I mean that's how the episode ends. And ends with he being sent to these six hells, and that's about it. So, any other thoughts? Any other thing I've been missing from this discussion?
In terms of story wise, no. I think all the plot details have been laid out very well. In terms of the episode itself, like okay, I really like this episode for a couple of reasons. But first of all, I want to mention like I think this episode was directed by Araki, and you can see that, and you can see that in the animation. Like the animation here is just on point.
Yeah, because I was about to say in the last episode, holy moly, last couple episodes, you can tell they got like their B team on it because like you can tell like some of them have like these derpy expressions. I wrote down here like going back to episode 55. I wrote down here like I believe one of the saints. I think it was the peacock one. He's like the sassy face he makes when the two jobbers corner him. He makes this weird face. Like I don't know. Like I think it was Iki, and he just makes this weird face. It's like I don't know.
I have a note about that too because like I feel like Iki more than any of the other ones. I guess because a lot of his episodes are kind of fillery. Like not obviously not when he's fighting like Shaka, but like a lot of his previous episodes have been like flashbacks to his life and stuff like that. So they're not exactly moving the plot forward. So I feel like that he gets the B team a lot. If you just look at different like screenshots of him, his character model is all over the place with his like face and his helmet, and the way his hair will flow out of his helmet changes constantly and like frames his face differently. Like there was one part, it might actually be the still that you're talking about. We'd have to compare, but it's like he's almost unrecognizable as the same character because he just looks so wonky.
I think it's the same shot because, like I said, like he has this weird sassy look in his face, like, I'm gonna fight you now. Like they could have picked any other, they couldn't pick any other expression for him. But regardless, I will say this, like as my closing thoughts. Like I thought, like I'm with Benjas, these are really great episodes. I love this fight, but I got a confession to make. As a kid, I made it this far into the series, and the video cassette that I was recording these episodes decided to eat the cassette. I never got to see these next couple episodes. So literally this episode and whatever happens next, as they get out of the Virgo house, I've never seen before. I've only seen it like through like clips, but I've never fully seen it because like literally like when the last time I saw this, I was a little kid and like my video cassette got eaten up by the VHS player. So
can't believe we're exposing Ramses in 2023. First episode of 2023, exposing Ramses.
Thank you. Just hand me that L. Just send me that L. Like, just send that L through like UPS. I'm just like that same day. Send that L and like overnight shipping. I'll gladly put it in my wall.
I'm just gonna do certified mail. It's too much of a hassle otherwise.
But regardless, regardless, is there anything else? Is anything else you guys want to discuss before we close this discussion up?
Yes. Well, in terms of this, first I'll go with the story overall for this episode, and then I'll say that the thing that's one of the most iconic things that have come out of the entire franchise in the Spanish speaking world. I think you'll know what I'm talking about, Ramses. Okay.
Lord,
First of
here we
all,
go.
in the episode, well, first of all, in this episode, I think I completely agree in seeing how you feel about the character. I think that especially in the anime, Shaka is not meant to be a likable character. And I can also see like he has a very how to put it, like even by anime standards, he has a very weird fighting style. Like his techniques are extremely how to put it, like Kurumada did an amazing job like researching Buddhism to incorporate those techniques and that religion into the aspects of this character, but at the same time like somebody that completely ignores like some of the most intricate aspects of it. And I include myself even now because I don't really know anything about Buddhism. Only like the few things that I've been able to learn through, for example, through the character or through some other stuff that I watch over the years. But like, if you don't know those details, it can be very confusing and very difficult to follow him, like how he fights. And I can also see why some people see him as a very overpowered character. At the very least, what I'll say is a part of that. I think this episode does a very good job in like introducing introducing the character. Well, not introducing him because he has appeared before, but like showing what menace he's going to represent for the character, since he basically owns every single one of them, and in a very strong way. Like I like he's very violent towards them, and he basically is playing with them. He could have just killed them outright instantly, but he decides to play with them a little bit, which ends up being his downfall. And it also gives Iki like an opportunity to shine and do one of his classic last minute in entrances to save everybody. So I really like that about the episode. And now like the final aspect that I think has to be mentioned, I cannot go without being mentioned in this. And let me give some context to you, because for the audience as well as for Furry. Furry, have you ever heard the meme of the Knight of Hunini?
No.
Okay, there is an extremely infamous translation error in this episode. Remember when Sean tries to attack Shaka and he freezes the chain, and he mentions this is also the thing that happened in the Gemini temple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody mistranslated or misheard what the original Japanese said, which he says Gemini, and they understood Hunini. And in Spanish, he says, I can't believe it. The chain stopped attacking him. The same happened with the Knight of Hunini. And everybody was like, who the fuck is that? Like,
What
when
is
we were
Hunini?
children, we were like, who the fuck is Hunini? And that ended up becoming one of the biggest memes to have come out of Saint Seiya. It's supposed to be that the Gemini scent, but like that's a nickname that even to this day it's still used for the Gemini scent, like the Hunini.
The Hunini Saint.
Yeah. I thought it was. I thought they did it a lot earlier, but no, I didn't know it was in this episode that they did
It's
that.
this
But yeah.
episode. It's this episode.
And I always make the joke. I always make the joke of like the reason why they put that reason why they did that is like either like, look, you gotta get this out by Monday, because like if not, it's gonna be our heads. Or look, it's Friday. It's 3:50 in the afternoon. It's about to be quitting time. Let's just leave it in. No one's gonna notice. It's a kid show. Whatever. So it's one of those situations where it's just like, oh my god, how careless can they get? But then you realize it's like, as much as this is one of those instances where it's like, as much as I love Saint Seiya, like as much as I love that particular dub, that Spanish dub was like, it was my youth and all that stuff. I won't stand here either. Just like how I won't stand here either and say like Saint Seiya is perfect. Like, no, there's some things where it's like there's things like that where I have to question things, right? Where I have to call them out and be like, what's up with this? Seriously. So yeah, that's a rather infamous thing. I remember having to do a workaround for that because like they used that reference in the Saint Seiya game I worked on. I had to like find a way. I had to find a way to make sense to a player that's never experienced that. So I had to so me and Zaichi were like back and forth. I was like, what do we do with this? Like, cause like I can't do it in English because like the English has no real, like there's nothing in English that can be comparable to this. So like we were just back and forth, and we just kind of like came to the decision of like just make them spew memes. So we just kind of created like the meme saint out of that. So if you ever like get to that point in the game, you're gonna like fight us like you would think you would fight the Saint of Junini. No, you're fighting the meme saint in the English version,
I
and
would just
just
think
spewing
that
memes because like there was no other way I could explain this character.
I would just think that it
So
would be like because well, it sucks because in English it's Gemini and not Jiminy because it reminds me so much of the game Space Channel 5. I don't know if you guys have ever played that or not, but
oh yeah.
it's for anybody that hasn't played it, it's like uh futuristic, a retro futuristic, I guess, because it's very 70s inspired, but it's in space. Dancing game, but it doesn't have a pad, it's all like controller inputs. And it's got like interesting songs and a random Michael Jackson cameo for no reason. But when you've completed the game, you can go back and replay the game. And I think it might be on a harder difficulty, but like small things are changed and it's fun to like point out the differences. But your main character, her rival's name is Pudding, and when you replay the game, in the level where she's like challenging you and you kind of have like your like little band duel or whatever you want to call it, like singing duel. Um, when you replay it in the different difficulty, the harder difficulty, she's replaced with a character named Padding, who looks like an old lady version of the original character, but nobody mentions it. They say Padding instead of Pudding, so they call her by the correct name, but nobody like makes a big deal out of the fact that she's like literally fighting an old woman, which is hilarious to me. But that's what it makes me think of is Jiminy and Hoonini. It's like it's Pudding and Padding.
Yeah. Alrighty then, guys. I think it's a good place to stop for this episode. I do really appreciate everything. I keep forgetting how much I love doing these shows here. So oh my our private little recording Discord. Oh my god, thank you, Benjas. You know what? I know now how I'm gonna end this episode now. Thank you very much. Thank you. I found the video like perfect. I'm gonna end this. I know how to put the stinger at the end of this episode. Perfect. Thank you so much. You made my job a lot easier today. So regardless, I guess it's a good place to stop here for the evening. Like I said, sometimes I dread doing this podcast, but then like once I start doing it, it's like, oh my god, I want to do more of this. But regardless, guys, like you said, we gotta go. We gotta go, and we got stuff to do, and like I don't want to keep you guys any longer. As a matter of fact, I think food has been ready for like the last hour here. So let's start with some let's start out with some like let's chill out your wares. So, Becas, what do you got to chill for us?
Already, you can find me at Mexican Geek 502 on Twitter. I also have an Instagram that I swear that I'm gonna start posting stuff there. Yeah, I've been very neglectful of my Instagram, but I swear I'm gonna start posting more things this year. It's the username is Crateris Benjas. So if you want to give me a follow there, I'd really I'd appreciate it, and I promise I'm gonna continue posting stuff there. And I have a couple things on the works, but until I have more concrete stuff to show for it, I'll keep that to myself for now. But hopefully you'll get to hear about it before the year ends.
Oh,
All right, Kamen Rider Furry, do you have anything you want to promote? And don't say you don't, because like we are doing something, and you.
I don't have anything going on. No, like you can follow me personally on Twitter and Instagram that I also don't use very much. You know what, Benhus, we should hold each other accountable for posting on Instagram. Like just once a week, just check in with each other and be like, okay, how many posts have you made? It's like, oh, you haven't posted anything. That's 10 Hail Marys for you. I don't know what Hail Mary is, but I hope 10 is a lot. But
Deal.
you can find me on both of those platforms at Kamen Rider Furry. I also have my own podcast that I occasionally feature some people from here, and one day I will rope Binhas into being on that as well. But it is called Ancient Anime, just a look back at some older anime, usually within the past 20 years or so, to see, or sorry, at least 20 years old is what I meant to say. Sorry, at least 20 years ago, to see if these shows that came out so long ago, if we just remember them fondly, or if they're actually a good piece of media, which has been so much fun. I've had so many of my friends. I've had one celebrity guest so far, which was mind blowing to me. That somebody actually said yes to me because I asked everybody under the sun. If you look at my Twitter, you'll just see me badgering people. But yeah, so you can follow that at Ancient Anime on both platforms as well. It is currently on hiatus, but should be coming back probably towards the end of February. I'm currently setting up some recording times, and I want to make sure all my ducks are in a row before I announce anything solid because unlike my friend here, Ramses, who like can turn an episode out same day, it takes me like 5 to 6 business days before I can muster myself to edit something. And then of course,
So you see, you're the United States Postal Service of podcasting. I'm the Amazon Prime of podcasting.
you're like the DHL of podcasting because you're like, oh yeah, I might have it out, next Tuesday, and then 3 hours later it's on your doorstep. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. But I'm also in another podcast that we just got our first episode out. But I will let Ramses talk a little bit more about that one because I'm sure he's excited to as well. But those are where you can find me.
All right. Other than this podcast, you can find me over at the Saturday Morning Squadron, which we just recorded our first episode back. Another show that's been on hiatus because of we wanted to take a break from all this. And our first episode back, we are discussing Dungeons and Dragons, which is an interesting topic because what's going on with the open game license. We discussed we discussed a lot about that and what's been going on with that. I think it's already outdated as a matter of fact. Because I think they kind of revised a lot of their policies that the draconian policies that they've imposed recently. It's like, oh wow, yeah. I'm not gonna take credit that they must have listened to our episode, but who knows. But if you want to listen to discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, from an expert standpoint and from someone that's barely getting into it, because the person I'm speaking with is my old friend Jay. And the person that he's been on it since second edition. This is starting with this edition, fifth edition. This is my first time doing this. So this is technically our third game that we played together with Dungeons and Dragons. So tells you how experienced I am compared to him. So you get to see a newbie standpoint and then from a veteran standpoint of what's going on with Dungeons and Dragons. So if you want to give that a listen, it will be a link on the description. And me and Kamen Rider Furry, we have launched a new podcast after much thinking about it. We just figured, hey, why don't we just do it? So we figured we launched Moon Sez, a Geek Era Sailor Moon podcast, and we launched our first episode. It was a fun episode to record. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback from it. A lot of people have been responding. A lot of people have been asking when the next episode and all that stuff. So. Next episode will be next week as of this recording. If we're recording correct, we're recording on the 29th of January. So the following week would be when that episode is recording, and I'm pretty sure at that time too, that's when the episode drops as well. Because again, I'm like DHL. You can find me on Twitter L_Ramses on Twitter. You can find me ramble about things either good or bad. Right now there's a lot of bad because just bad brain right now, but I'm coping. I'm doing good. But if you want to see me spam toys to no end, you can find me on Instagram, which is l.ramses.84. And yeah, that's where a lot of that's where you just see me post toys until the end of time because I like toys a lot. By the way, most of the money is going to go to toys.
The only one of us three that properly utilizes that app.
I try my best here, but I can only do so much because there's only so many things I have. But I do want to take some things out of storage and be like, hey, how about this? What do you guys think of this? All right, then, guys, thank you so much for listening. For Benjas and Kamen Rider Furry, I am Ramses, and I'm here to tell you to keep burning that cosmos. I will see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nini.
No puedo creerlo, la cadena ha dejado de atacar y se rinde. Lo mismo que sucedió justo con el caballero de Junini.